Shaw, how important is this for the West?
Well, I think it's just another drop in a bucket that's quickly coming full. Pakistan is in extraordinary difficulty, I think. Its unrest on the western border is increasing. It appears that Mr. Zardari's government is making various kinds of ceasefires with the tribes in the hope that they will turn west toward Afghanistan and stop bringing their violence into Pakistan proper. So I think this is just another step on a road toward hell, if you will.
So you feel this is a failing state, if not a failed state yet?
Well, it's obviously approaching failure, sir, and really, we really have ourselves to blame for this. So much of the problems that Pakistan has had in the last year is the result of our insisting that democracy return to the country. We're really getting to the point that unless the Pakistani general officers intervene again, you very well could have a failed state. The result of democracy was putting in President Zardari, who is, of course, one of the biggest thieves in Pakistan's history. So it's a very tenuous situation and a very bad government to be in charge in that situation.
Do you think any of the blame here, Mateen Hamid, is attributable to Western pressure?
I think it is, but I think the Western pressure is more than just on Musharraf to leave. It has to do with looking at Pakistan through a lens of the war on terror. To me, the war on terror is a byproduct of the fact that Pakistan isn't functioning very well as a state. It makes more sense in the long run to build up the Pakistani state and hope that that counteracts terror, as opposed to focus on this war in the northwest frontier at the process of destabilizing the Pakistani state.
Michael Shaw, you're nodding there.
Yes, I entirely agree with that, and I would go one step further. For the United States and Britain and Canada to be 8 years in Afghanistan and still not be able to decide what kind of forces they need there and find themselves being beaten by the Mujahideen is certainly something that's having its repercussions in Pakistan. Ultimately, the war against al-Qaeda was America's war. It was not Pakistan's war. And we continue to behave as if this is the Cold War and all countries have the same interests as America does. And we decided that Pakistan was going to be the proxy for our effort against al-Qaeda. And it's failed. Pakistan has done as much as it can. It cannot do any more and survive as a viable political entity.
So what does the West do? Just give up on Afghanistan?
Well, clearly we have no intent, we have no idea of what we're doing even, sir. What's the mission there? The Canadian Prime Minister said yesterday or the day before that victory isn't possible, and certainly President Obama's adolescent inexperience is clearly in demonstration by promising 17,000 more troops, which won't do anything but provide more American targets for the Taliban and al-Qaeda. We've never been serious about Afghanistan. We've looked for other people to do our dirty work, sir, and now we're paying the piper.
Now, when you look at what's happening inside Pakistan, the accommodations that are trying to be made, we've seen this deal up in SWAT, there's all this talk about what ought to happen in the territories along the border with Afghanistan, Mateen Hamid. Can that go on indefinitely, or does the country then just begin to just fall apart, and at that point, presumably the military say, we won't put up with this?
Well, I think there is a risk that if that continues, the country could fall apart, and the military could step in. But what's happened is the military is no longer the institution it once was, that people in Pakistan think it can restore stability to the country. And there's a real fear that there is nothing left to restore stability. I disagree with the idea that democracy cannot be the answer, although I agree that the current venal politicians don't appear to be offering any answers. But rather, I think backing off on the war on terror and focusing on the war to build up Pakistan is the objective. And also to keep a sense of perspective that yes, there will be terrorist attacks in the West. Some will originate from Pakistan. But the idea of fighting those in the short term and destabilizing a country as large as Britain, Germany, and France with nuclear weapons is much more dangerous for America and the West.
Michael Shaw, can the West take that risk?
Well, I think my own view, sir, is that within the next year, President Obama is going to wake up one morning and he's going to say, I can lose Afghanistan, or I can lose Afghanistan and Pakistan. And he has to cut the Afghans loose at that point, and no matter what comes of that, because Pakistan is an essential country to the West and a nuclear power, so you can't turn your back on Pakistan, sir.
Thank you both very much indeed. Thank you.
Now, news never stops, but if you're old enough, you might recall that television news used to. That was until the coming of the 24-hour rolling channels pioneered by CNN, the cable news network. It was founded by Ted Turner in 1980 and is now talked of as the biggest news-gathering organization in the world after the BBC. Ted Turner has just published an autobiography, Call Me Ted, and Jeremy's been speaking to him. First, a brief look at his life.
The wealthily born young Ted was forced to earn his way at university after his father stopped paying his fees in disgust over a decision to study classics. In a letter at the time, his father wrote, "I almost puked on the way home today. With whom will you communicate in Greek?" Founding CNN brought him international recognition for introducing 24-hour news in English to the world. With success came new friends of many persuasions. But his sale of Time Warner years later would blow a reported $7 billion hole in his pockets after an unprecedented merger with AOL just before the internet bubble burst. He wasn't left entirely poor, donating $1 billion to the UN, and his sacking left him with plenty of time to tour his ranches, which cover an area the size of 2 states. His autobiography ends with 70 years distilled into an 11-point environmental